Hari Om, everyone. We will continue the study of Bhagavad Gita where we ended last time, chapter 2. We'll chant verses 14 and 15 just to recapitulate. We can chant together, but please mute yourself so that there's no echoing. Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkadaha agama payino nityaha tam titikshasva bharata yam hina vyathayantyete purusham purusharshava samadukha sukham dhiram somrutatvaya kalpate. So Lord Krishna, to solve Arjuna's problem of shoka or sorrow, moha, wrong thinking, delusion, confusion, is trying to convince him and ready him for the dharma yudh that needed to be fought to establish righteousness. And so he tackles his teaching at 3 levels. He starts with the highest level, the adhyatmic or philosophical level. And the verses we are doing now, starting from verse 12 to 25, talks about that higher knowledge about Atma, which is our true nature and which we must understand to understand what is right and wrong. Then he tackles it at a different level, the ethical level, the dharma-adharma level. And thirdly, he will tackle it in this chapter from the vyavarik level or worldly level. What will people say? What should I be doing as Arjuna? So all of that will come. But seen from any angle, he will say, Arjun, you have to get up and start this battle. So let's see what he says. Just to recap, the main point he's making in these few verses from the Adhyatmic angle is that the nature of Atma is something to be understood by us. And Atma is our real nature of each of us. And so we must understand that Atma is not a doer, is not a karta, and it is not also a bhokta or experiencer. Yet we say we go through life doing and experiencing. So where are we misled in this? What we have done is we have adopted ourselves or our individuality has propped up saying that I, the body, the mind, the intellect, at that level, I am doing, I am experiencing sorrow or joy or whatever it may be. So this is one thing Sri Krishna is trying to reassert, that Atma is a karta and a bhokta. And therefore, Arjuna, you're not killing anyone like Bhishma, Pitamaha or Dronacharya-ji, and they are not being killed. They are also Atmas. Just like ocean and waves, that example will hit home. Waves, a wave we can say has a beginning and an end. And it can say, I'm born and I die. But what is wave anyway? In reality, it is the oceanic water. And as water, it is never born or never dies. So this is the analogy between Atma and our personality or individuality or Jeev Bhav, which is stemming from our identification with body, mind, intellect. So from Atma Drashti, there is no killer and there is no killing or killed relationship. Now let's go back and recap because I think we had done up to 15 fairly well, verse 15. So in verse 12 and 13, Bhagavan says, Atma ever is eternal. It was there in the past, it's there at present, and it will be there in future. It's infinite. Yet our body, mind, intellect complex, and I'll call it briefly as BMI, is finite, ephemeral. So change your attitude and learn to accept that what is anatma has to go one day. Whatever it may be, whether it's a possession like a car, a house, or whether it is you yourself, your body, or your close relative, the body has to go, has to depart. And so we will feel sorrowful, but we have to develop an inner strength, the Lord says, endurance or titiksha, so that we can manage our emotions and go on with life. And we develop a kind of sahan shakti to take all the downs and ups of life, without which even self-knowledge is not possible. So in verse 15, he says that a dhir purusha, or a discriminative one, has already understood this, has understood the atma, anatma, vivek, or differences, and has accepted that this matra sparsha, meaning the changing world, it does not bother him. He does not get na vyathayanti, does not get disturbed by this changing world. He accepts the arrival and departure of both liked and unliked situations. And such a mind is said to have shock absorbers like our cars have, so that it can travel the road of life without really being shaken up too much. Like a car would go through potholes when it has good shock absorbers. It doesn't totally run smooth, and we are not also likely to, but we can manage our emotions. And that's what Lord advises us in verse 15. Now let's go on to the next verse, which is really one of the deepest and terse verse in the entire Bhagavad Gita. In fact, it's very captivating because it almost thinks out of the box for most of us who have not studied Gita in depth. So this will be lead and repeat. We'll do it in 4 padas. Nasato vidyate pavaha. Nasato vidyate pavaha. Na bhavo vidyate sataha. Na bhavo vidyate sataha. Ubhayorapi drashtuntam. Ubhayorapi drashtuntam. Tvanayorstattvadarshibhihi. Tanayostattvadarshibhihi. The whole verse together. Na sato vidyate bhavaha. Na bhavo vidyate sataha. Ubhayorapi drashtuntam. Tvanayostattvadarshibhihi. Now, before I go into word meaning of it, I'll have to give some introductory remarks to get a better understanding of the verse. The gist of the whole verse is that Atma is Satyam and Anatma is Asatyam or Mithya. And let's see, Satya means real, Asatya, Mithya means unreal. Excuse me. Can someone please admit, so I'm not distracted by this caption that comes up, admit. So, think of an object. Every object has its intrinsic property or nature. We call it the true nature. I'm using the word intrinsic because it's inherent in that object. Simple example, sugar. Sugar is sweet. You won't call any substance sugar unless it is sweet. So sweetness is an inherent or natural or true nature or property of that substance. So that's called its intrinsic nature. Now that same substance can often take on or borrow another nature for a short period of time. That borrowed nature is called incidental nature. So once in a while, you see that nature exhibited in that substance or object. Now, intrinsic nature is always there because it's natural. So it doesn't go away. Water always flows. It's its inherent nature. It's cool, inherent nature. So intrinsic nature is always there and it's permanent. It's sat, real. While borrowed nature or incidental nature comes and goes. It will be there when the conditions are conducive, not there when those conditions are not met. Now let's illustrate that by a very good example all of us use every day. I want to cook a potato. So what do? A cold potato I bought from a grocery shelf. I put it in some water. The water is cool. I put the water in a vessel. The vessel is cool. And I put the vessel on the fire. The fire is inherently hot. As I switch on the fire, the vessel gets heated. It borrows heat from the fire. Once it is hot, the water borrows heat from the vessel. Water gets heated up and boils. And from the water, the potato borrows heat and starts to cook. So all of these three, the vessel, the water, and the potato, have incidental nature of heat borrowed from fire. But can we say fire has incidental property of heat? No, fire has intrinsic property. A fire is not fire unless it has heat and light. I can take that fire to Siberia and it'll still be hot. So the intrinsic nature never goes away. The incidental nature goes away. The potato will cool off, the water will cool off, the vessel will cool off once the fire is removed. So this is meant by those two natures. Now let's apply this to our understanding of spirituality. But before we do that, again, we'll reiterate that anything that is borrowed is finite or transient. And it is agama payino, as Lord Krishna told us earlier. But whatever is intrinsic never goes away. So using this law, let's talk about what we know. We know the world. Everything in the world is perishable, constantly changing. So it has to be incidental nature of everything in the world. So where is it getting this from? It is getting it from the substratum of the entire universe, including space, which is Brahman or Atma. Now take example of the body. Your and my body has date of birth, date of death, and in between we exist. We have no existence before, as of the body, not of the Atma. We have no existence, and after death we cease to exist. So our existence is temporary during the time that we have borrowed it from Atma or Brahman. So all inanimate things in the world also are similar. You know, you take a chair you are sitting on. It has a manufacturing date. That's when it started its existence. It has a expiry date when it breaks down or goes back to the original substance, the wood. So it had borrowed its existence from the substance wood, which is relatively truly existent, the Panch Mahabhutas, right? So this is what we are talking about, that everything in the world we see, which is the changing world, is all ephemeral, finite, with borrowed existence, including this sharir, this mind, this intellect, yours and mine. They are made out of Panch Mahabhutas. They are also existing in a borrowed fashion. with a incidental nature, then what allows this to function? The life principle or consciousness that we call Atma is the only Satyam, is the one from which, whose intrinsic nature is Sat, Chit, and who lends existence to the body, mind, intellect in each of us and in every, as I said, inanimate things. So this is what we have to understand. Again, example. One can have a made-up beauty, with makeup and all. How long does it last? As long as the makeup lasts. You go knock on the door of that person unannounced and see the natural beauty of the person. It will not be the same, right? So everything is finite. It is gone when the conducive environment is not there. These are all called unreal in Vedantic terms. Asat, mithya, that is what it is called. Anatma, another extended term. All of these terms imply that that thing does not have an independent existence, does not enjoy independent natural quality like heat in fire. It doesn't enjoy that. So therefore, what is the definition of unreal? Anything that does not have existence as its true nature. We can put it like that. That's why remember Atma's Swarup is Sat, Chit, Ananda. So Sat part is talked about. Sat means existence. Sat means truth. Sat means independently there. Another example, commonly talked about in Upanishads, clay pot. Clay is the substance, earth, right? Clay exists all the time, relatively. Even before the pot was made, clay was. When the pot was made by the potter, the pot came into existence. The birth of the pot occurred. Unfortunately, pot got broken. So pot died, so to say. And what happens? There is no pot, but clay remains. So clay was, is, through and through the pot. Every part of the pot is clay, and clay will be when the pot is gone. So this is the similarity we have to take up. So clay lended existence to pot, and clay remained, but pot lost its borrowed existence when it broke. So that's why, in a way, it is said that in anything you see, there is easiness. Easiness meaning something that is there all the time, the existence. And then there is a name and a form, like a pot for carrying water or milk or whatever it is. It has a shape, it has utility, it is bound by time till it's destroyed. And so it's a finite thing. So these are the ways we are explained that real existence is Satyam, Sat, and it's the intrinsic existence, permanent existence, and that is enjoyed in this creation only by Atma. Everything else is borrowed existence. Well, you know what? Vedanta is over. This is all we have to learn. Sat, Asat. Now, the examples are not, just like examples are, they are not very accurate, because then you will say, well, you say Atma is Sat, then you say clay is Sat, then you say oceanic water is Sat. So how many things are Sat? These are all relative Sat, but the real one Sat Vastu is Atma in the entire creation. So, and what is entire creation? It is Atma as the substratum, or Brahman you can call it, as a substratum or support, with everything else, the Anatma, as name and form. Yeah, we have myself, we have Pratima Kumar, we have so-and-so, whoever I can see in these little windows. So everybody has a name, they have a form, but they are just superimposition on the substratum or the background of Atma. Just like a movie runs on a screen, the movie appears real to the audience, but the screen is supporting the flashing movement of the photos or slides or whatever. So that is what has to be remembered. Now, let's go to verse 16 in details to see what it's saying. These things are expressed in that verse. Nasato vidyate bhavaha. If you separate that, asataha bhavaha na vidyate. Asat. Asat means mithya vastu, not real. Bhavaha means intrinsic existence, true existence. Sat, true existence. Na vidyate is not there. So in asat vastu, asat meaning unreal thing, impermanent thing, there is no true existence as their nature. Then the second part says of the first line, na bhavo vidyate sataha. Again here, sataha abhavaha na vidyate. For satvastu, that is real thing, who has intrinsic, who enjoys intrinsic existence, abhavaha, non-existence, is never there. So it never goes away, right? It's put with two negatives, that it's always existent. So it never not exists. So Atma never not exists. Relative example, clay never not exists. Oceanic water never not exists. So that is the first line. So real thing does not have non-existence ever, and unreal thing does not have independent existence. It can come and go. Now, let's see the next line. Tattva-darshibihi, the second part of the second line. Tattva-darshibihi. Tattva means, tat is a pronoun for Brahman. So tattva means the state of being Brahman, or the one, darshibihi, the people or wise ones who have seen the tattva, who has got the tattva jnanam, who has realized the truth. And that's why we use tat in Om Tat Sat. That's how the word is used in Upanishads. So the seers of the truth, drashtaha, clearly understand antaha, ubayoho api. Antaha means the end, or the real essence, or the true nature of ubayoho, of both these, meaning sat and asat, or the real, that was talked about in the first line, satyam and mithya, atma, anatma, api also, meaning these wise people who have understood the truth handle both atma and anatma, knowing very well their true nature. The true nature of atma being permanent, sat, swarup, satya swarup, and anatma being coming and going, finite, and always changing. And they handle and use the pot like you and I do, understanding that pot is nothing but clay through and through. So if you ever get that vision that this entire world, including my equipment of BMI, is anatma, and that it will come and go, it will decay, it will modify, it will grow old, it will have disease. And that, like I change my mind in various things, so can everybody else. All minds can change. I have to accept that. I can't become sorrowful if suddenly somebody close in my family says something opposite to what I believe in. They have as much right as I do to think of things in different ways. So we realize that our mind especially, and even our body, is fragile. That's why we have to handle it with care. And that's why we have that expression, he broke down when they can't handle some situation by the mind. So we must, the wise one is the one who is accepting this. And that's why he's called Dhira Purusha. Now here, one thing that you may come across, and I'm introducing it because it's important to understand, and that, you may say, well, you know what? I see this world. So does my neighbor and my friend. How can you say it's unreal? The reality is based on the level of consciousness or the plane of existence. Like when I'm in the world is very real to me. I can't run in front of a speeding car. I'll be gone. I have to know that. But when I'm in a dream plane of consciousness, what do? I go through a whole other set of experiences. But when that waking mind comes back, what does it say? That was illusory. It was just a dream. So, but in the dream, it was very real to me as I went through the dream sequences. So the reality is based on the plane of your existence. So nobody is asking us to say, hey, there is no world. It's unreal. The world is real when you are transacting in the world. But if you have the higher vision, the absolute vision or the highest vision, that this world at the paramarthic level, at the absolute level, has no reality, then that is a fact of great solace to us. We understand we are Atma, that we understand the nature of our equipment, and we understand what it's going to bring us with growth and old age, etc. And we will accept it better. Just like somebody watching a wave doesn't start crying because the wave goes down into the waters. We just say, oh, okay, yeah, I know. The ocean wave rises, goes down, but the ocean remains. So I'm okay with that kind of an attitude. So Vedanta clarifies that what you transact at worldly level, Vyavaharik level, that's Vyavaharik Satta, some things are real at that point. But that reality is lost in another plane, which is the Pratibhasik or Pratibhasik Satta. That is the illusory Satta, which is typical example is a dream. Other examples in waking hours is when we see mirage water, we see the blue sky, etc. So that tells you that that dream was not real when you wake up. And then the highest, at absolute level, both these, at paramarthic level, both of these are unreal. And as long as we understand that, it won't be difficult to accept this unreality of the world and our body. So only Brahman enjoys true reality, and everything else has borrowed it from Atma and Brahman. So with this understanding, let's see what Sri Krishna says further about Atma that he's talking about. He says, chant verse 17, lead and follow. Avinashi tu tad viddhi, avinashi tu tad viddhi, yena sarvamidam tatam, yena sarvamidam tatam, vinashamavyayasyasya, vinashamavyayasyasya, na kaschit kartumarhati, na kaschit kartumarhati, avinashi tu tad viddhi, yena sarvamidam tatam, vinashamavyayasyasya, na kaschit kartumarhati. So here looking at the words, avinashi, vinash, destruction, avinashi, that which cannot be destroyed, indestructible, tu, but tat viddhi, tat, remember the pronoun for Atma Brahman, know that Brahman to be indestructible. Yena sarvam idam tatam, say something more, by which, yena, by which, sarvam idam, all this includes the universe and space and myself, my body. Idam tatam, tatam means pervaded. by which all this is pervaded. But know that indestructible Brahman, by which all this is pervaded, vinasham avyayasya, vinasham, destruction of asya, of this avyaya, of this immutable one, immutable, indestructible, infinite, eternal, na kaschit kartum arhati, nobody can ever bring about destruction of this immutable Atma. So, but know that that meaning tat, meaning referring to Atma or Brahman, to be indestructible, by which all this is pervaded. The whole universe is pervaded. No one can bring about destruction of this immutable reality. So this verse in a way is the repetition of what we saw earlier, that Atma is Nitya or eternal. But he's calling it by a different name. He says, Tataha Avinashi, cannot be destroyed. Again, same thing. Atma, we can call it relatively, Atma of pot is clay. Clay cannot be destroyed. The pot can be destroyed. And even science says and agrees with us that matter is indestructible, right? It changes forms, modifies, but it's indestructible. And anatma, the pot, is really a name and form which is limited by time, by utility, by space, etc. Therefore, Arjun, Viddhi, you understand this clearly. Kaschid vinasham kartum na arhati. Nothing or no one can destroy this Atma. Not God, Shankaracharya ji says in his Bhashya, not even God or Ishvara can destroy Atma, and not atom bomb or anything that is man-made. So why are you, Arjun, saying you're going to kill Bhishma Pitamaha or Dronacharya? They are Atmas. Then he adds another quality or swarup of Atma in the pada, yena sarvam idam tatam. Yena, meaning this Atma, sarvam, idam, all this, tatam, pervaded, is pervaded by Atma. This is the quality of sarva gataha, meaning all pervading nature of Atma. Meaning that this whole creation, again, repetition, but is pervaded by Atma alone. And even space is pervaded by Atma. It is avikari, it is avinashi, it is nirakaram, not seen. When you have a boundary of a thing, like say a stone or a rectangle or whatever, then you can define, after defining the boundary, you can define the shape, the form of that object. So Atma doesn't have a boundary. It's all pervading. So it is formless. Space is also formless, but even space is pervaded by Atma. Now, taking example of space clarifies this further. When we build a house with various rooms, with various functionality, we say, oh, this is dining room space, this is living room space. But when the house is broken down, what happens to the dining room space and living room space? It remains as space, one space. Similarly, Atma is all pervasive and remains as one. It is everything, pure existence. So thus far we have learned that Atma is Nitya, Satya, and now Sarvagataha. Let's see now the next verse. We'll chant verse 18, lead and follow. Antavanta ime dehaha, Antavanta ime dehaha, Nityas yukta sharirinaha, Nityas yukta sharirinaha, Anashino prameyasya. Anashino prameyasya. Tasmad yudhyasva bharata. Tasmad yudhyasva bharata. Antavanta ime dehaha. Nityasyokta sharirinaha. Anashino prameyasya. Tasmad yudhyasva bharata. This verse is answering what is asat and further telling us the discrimination between sat and asat. Says, Antavanta ime dehaha. Antavanta, having an end, destructible. Ime, these, dehaha, plural, all these bodies. Meaning you, me, all these things in the creation. So destructible are these bodies, as opposed to nityasya ukta sharirinaha. Sharirinaha. Sharirina means the one embodied in the body, which is Atma. Only one, singular, in all the bodies. Dehaha. Nityasya uktaha. Nitya, everlasting, eternal. Uktaha are said. So the embodied one, Atma, within our body, is said to be everlasting, Nitya, while all these bodies, names and forms, are said to be Antavanta or destructible. Again, Anashino, indestructible, Aprameyasya, Tasmad Yuddhasva Bharata. Anashino, again describing Atma, indestructible, we already saw that. Aprameyasya. Prameya means to see with our senses and mind, anything, any object, any person, being, etc. So aprameya, something we cannot know as an object, something we cannot see or understand with our senses or mind. So these destructible bodies are said to belong to the everlasting, indestructible, indeterminable, embodied one, unknowable embodied one. Therefore, Tasmad Yudhyasva Bharata. It looks like this pada is kind of out of place, but it merely says, it's not a command, it merely says, Arjuna, that's why there's a good reason for you to get up and do your duty as a Kshatriya. So, O descendant of Bharata, go ahead and commence the war. So let's look at the verse in more details. Ime dehaha antavantaha. So these bodies, plural, have an end, meaning they have a birth and they have a death. And by the way, incidentally, the name for Yama, the god of death, is Antakaha, the one who brings an end to everybody. So we are mortal. And the word deha comes from the letters the, to burn, and the, to grow, which deha does, right? The bodies grow and the body is burned at the end. Nityasya ukta sharirinaha. Eternal is said to be the one who is within the body, the Atma. The special name Atma enjoys when it is embodied in a living being is sharirinaha. So that is the word. So Atma is Nitya, it is Anashin, we said that earlier, Aprameyasya, meaning it cannot be known as an object because it is the subject itself. It is who knows. Atma is who knows. Atma is knowledge swarup, it knows. Now, if that is so, how many Atmas are there? There are so many things, so many beings. Well, Atma is only one. And how do we say that? And Atma ever exists. Take example, if it is existent, how come we don't see it? Well, take example of common examples. In the olden days, I can't say that now, but in the olden days, we had a cameraman using a camera to take a photograph. He may have taken many photographs at a wedding or a special event, but he will never be in any of the photographs. Nowadays, there are things they do to get him to take selfies, etc. But in the olden days, no. Similarly, you and me could have never seen how we looked if we didn't have mirror in this creation, right? We can never see our own face except a reflection in a mirror. We can never see our eyes except as those reflected in the mirror. We would have had to depend on what others said about us, whether eyes are beautiful or not beautiful or whatever it is. So the seer is never the seen. That is the idea. Drashta is never the drashya. Atma is never this anatma vastu in universe. So that is the idea, that notion must be realized, that entire creation is almost like a photograph in our mind, projection of our mind. Tasmad yudhyasva bharata. Therefore, Arjuna, do your duty. You are a descendant of the mighty Bharata. And Arjuna, it is your thought that Bhishma and Dronacharya ji will die and you will kill them. That's a very wrong notion. It's a delusory notion in you. Remove it and do your duty as a Kshatriya. Now here, one thing you may question, that we say Atma is unknowable. But I know I am. I know I exist. What is that knowledge? Right? We say, each of us are always very sure of one thing, that I'm a woman, I'm existing, etc. What is that? Vedanta calls it samanya jnana, general knowledge, that you exist. But the vishesh jnana that we need to get to overcome this delusion, confusion, sorrow in samsara, this ajnanam roop problems that we have, is removing the wrong notions as to what our absolute nature is, which is Atma. Right now, all of us consider myself as this individuality, Meena Patel or whoever it is, with so-and-so qualifications or so-and-so relatives and so-and-so place where I live, etc. So that is the idea. So Atma cannot be killed, is not a karta, not a bhokta. And as Atma, I am immortal. But as body, mind, I am mortal. So in conclusion, Lord Krishna has alluded to Atma as being Nitya, as being Satya, Nitya meaning eternal, Satya meaning reality, Sarvagataha, all pervading reality, everything has Atma as its support, and Aprameya, it is never seen or recognized as an object, it is the subject itself. And this knowledge allows us to relatively discriminate between Atma and Anatma, Satyam, Asatya or Mithyavastu, and we have to put that into our understanding of what the world is, what I think I am, what is my individuality that I am living by and suffering from. When anything happens to the body, anything happens to the mind, I'm insulted, I feel bad, I can't sleep that night, my body has pain, I suffer. So all of this, I need to understand that my true nature is Atma, the conscious life principle that enlivens my BMI. And now this is high philosophy. What is our take-home message? I think the real take-home message is that if you are to hold on to this reality or understanding, intellectual appreciation of this higher reality, Atma, that's Ishwar Swarup, right? Ishwar is Atma Swarup, whichever way you want to put it. That you change or shift your reliance to Ishvara instead of relying on this world, be it your immediate family and friends, be it inanimate objects, your job, your income, your house, and all that stuff. Instead of constantly focusing on that, if you shift your focus to the higher self, you will have a relatively quiet mind, which can handle situations as they come and which can discriminate, make right choices, and live life according to what is in our individual prarabdha. So learn to lean on Atma, learn to lean on Ishvara. Do not lean on coming and going or finite things and relations that we are with at present at worldly level. And actually, you can define liberation or moksha as one who has learned to rely entirely on Atma, Atma Swarup. And bondage or sansar is one who is still enmeshed in local relationships, etc. So that is where I will end now. I'm ending a few minutes early as we have a health talk at sharp 11, and I'm sure there'll be many other people joining us. So we'll end with a prayer. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Hari Om, everyone.